In this movie I want to talk about the new features in WinDoor 16, and we'll begin by going to a layer that has some objects on it, and let's start with the object on the end here. First thing you'll notice is that the frame now all joins up as a solid object, so you get the correct looking joins here, particularly in hidden line render. I guess the biggest change is the form dialog, which we can access by clicking the form button in the object info palette or just double clicking the unit. And here we've made some substantial improvements, including the addition of the 3D and 2D previews. So starting at the top, we've added the ability to include sashes in a fixed head, in a custom head I should say. We also have a quicker way of changing all of the sashes to the same type. So if I set this to say awning hung, I can now just click this button here, match all sash types to top left, and all sashes will match to the same style. We also have direct access to maximum sash width here, so at 720, if this value here drops to lower than 720, then we'll get multiple sashes within that one division. So if I set that to 700, you'll see that we now get a pair of sashes in there. We can control the number of doors, so I can do that in this dialog as well as being able to do it out here in the object info palette. Let's set that back to 800. And if this was a different style of door, let's say a folding door for example, and we change this to folding, you'll see that these will become grayed, and we can then now set the left and right directly from here as well. And you can choose whether they open inwards or outwards also directly in this dialog. And finally we have these three controls here which will allow you to set the fixed point, and these are only relevant when the overall height of a unit has changed, and it just allows you to confirm which part of the unit will remain fixed when you click OK. In this case it's automatically set to the sill of the unit, which is when you're dealing with doors, that's the most likely scenario. But if it was a window and you had normally had set a sill height of a meter or something like that, and you change the overall height, and you wanted the head to remain fixed, then you can just click that and it will automatically make the adjustments in the object info palette when you click OK. So the next thing I want to look at is doors in frames, and here we have a frame that goes for the full width of the wall, and you've always been able to offset frames within walls. So if I enter a value in here of say -50, a couple of inches, you'll see that the frame will move back in the wall, but we've never been able to offset the door itself within the wall. And this means that if it was an inwards opening door, it would sit at the inside edge of the frame, and if it was an outwards opening door, it would sit at the outside edge of the frame. So we now have the ability to position the door anywhere within the frame that we like. In the geometry dialog, under door members, you'll see we have a value here. So if I wanted to offset that by say 50 millimeters, a couple of inches, I will go minus. So minus is away from the outside of the wall. Click OK, and you'll see that the unit has now been offset by the specified amount. This is also quite a nice feature. If we go up to this unit here, we've always been able to offset the window sashes a little bit, and you get that just that nice little line through there, particularly in a 3D view, where you can just differentiate the alignment of the sash from the frame. And let's just set this to an outwards opening. But for doors, these two have always been flush, and particularly raster renders, in OpenGL and RenderWorks renders, you can get a kind of flushness here. So you can also use this feature to just differentiate the frame and the door a little bit. So in here, if I went to geometry, door, members, and just offset this by say -10, which is what the sashes are offset by, click OK, you'll see you just get that nice differentiation there between the sash and the door. And in an OpenGL render, the frames just sit out a little bit and it just looks better. So the next thing, I'll just go back to that 3D view again, is that we've added support for modular doors and windows. Now, for those who don't know, a modular door or window is a unit that has the sashes sitting on the outside of the frame, and there are a number of manufacturers of these types of units in Australia and also in other parts of the world. So if I render this in OpenGL, you'll see here that what I mean, the sashes are actually sitting on the outside of the frame rather than inside the frame, and you can set up a unit to work like this with this new control in the object info palette. So there's a framing system which is standard. So if I set this back to standard, then the sashes will all appear within the frame. If we switch it to modular, then the sashes will sit outside the frame, and the value for offset from wall face will now be to the outside face of the sash, so it actually pushes the frame further back. Now, one thing that we've added here, one control that we've added, is the ability to specify a gap in the sashes. Now, if you're doing hidden line rendering and producing 1 to 50 or 1 to 100 elevations, you probably don't want to add this gap, particularly because when you print it out, it will just, the two lines very close together will just read like a thick line. But in 3D views, it can be quite nice to show that gap. So if I add 10 millimeters there, then you'll see that you just get that differentiation now between the doors and windows and the various components, which just improves the look of it. Now, if you are starting from scratch with one of these units, we also have one further option with modular, and that is to pre-populate some of the values with the Velfac unit settings. And if you choose this, it will just in the background fill out some values in other parts of WinDoor to make the unit match the settings, but it will then just jump back to modular. So if I choose that, you'll see that this will still stay on modular, but the settings will have been set in other parts of WinDoor. And if we look at those settings, the settings that will get changed are the sash styles will all get set to 54, the top and bottom rail, and the depth. The offset from the face of the frame will get set to 5 millimeters to just create a little gap. The same thing will happen for doors. All of these will get set to 54. And the one thing that that you will have to do yourself when using particularly Velfac, but the other ones, is to look at the manufacturer's products and set these jam and sill values to the correct numbers, and also most importantly the mullion and transom, which tend to be double the sash, which means 108 millimeters. And once you have all those things set up, then WinDoor is going to perform fairly predictably and give you something that that looks fairly correct. And you'll see if we look at this in this view here, you can see the sashes sitting on the outside of the frame as expected, and the elevation view as expected.